Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Summers, and welcome to the audio edition of Mind, Body, and Soul, a show about your mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. Well, my guest today is certainly no stranger. Uh, Dr. Brenda Kelleher Flight I've interviewed Brenda a number of times, and if you haven't listened to her previous recordings, I suggest you really go back and listen to them. She has a wonderful interview about being imperfectly perfect, which really hits a chord with a lot of people. And she was also a panelist on when I had two other people, a psychotherapist, Nancy Leaf, and mother of four with a wonderful online business, Lisa Shepherd. They talked about comparison and perfection, the traps of doing that. So I would encourage everybody to go back and listen to those two interviews. They are very compelling and very, very interesting. So anyway, welcome, Dr. Brenda Kelleher Flight.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, so Brenda, can you give our listeners just an idea of what you do and what they can expect to hear from you today?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I work a lot in the area of management and leadership coaching. I work a lot at the governance level as well. My background, I'm a certified coach. I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm a mediator, I'm an investigator. So I've worked a lot in these areas. I feel I've made every mistake in the book, so no one can surprise me with their issues.
The good thing about, sorry to interrupt, but the good thing is we all make mistakes. The good thing is you only made them once.
Absolutely, absolutely, the way to learn.
Somebody makes the same mistake over and over again, they never learn. Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So I spend a lot of time in the area of leadership. I spend a lot of time with people who feel they're stuck personally. And I keep saying that, are you surviving or are you moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
So I spend a lot of time there. I do spend a lot of time in the area of conflict resolution and teaching people conflict resolution skills. I work with people who are entering divorce and separation, and I do a lot with parents planning around childcare as well. So the majority of my work is certainly in the area of conflict and leadership and governance.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
No, so what I find is that my intention is to find the beliefs that people have that can hold them back and to help them broaden their frame around the issues they're looking at, and may sometimes change the frame and help them achieve their goals.
I think people have this misconception that they've basically given up and said, well, I guess this is the life that's thrown at me and I just have to learn to live with it. But if people can only understand that beliefs are choices.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, Gary, I keep telling my clients that we have like a handbook or a playbook in our minds, and that playbook comes very often before our brain is fully developed. And it comes through the beliefs of our parents, our teachers, clergy, siblings, friends, whatever. And it's like you develop this handbook and then you keep reacting to life through whatever that handbook says.
It's
almost, like you.
Okay, go ahead.
It's so
interesting. It's so interesting talking to you when you say things. My mind just explodes with all this stuff. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So what happens is, if you think about it, your handbook was developed probably between your ages of 0 and 15, and you keep playing that. But that's like using a computer that you bought 20 years ago. Now there's new computers. It's time to update the computer. And so the question is,
go ahead, sorry.
So is it time do you want to keep using the old computer, or are you going to update it? And that's like your handbook. So coaching helps you update your handbook.
It's like that old tape recorder, right? That keeps playing around and around and around and around in your head. As I look at it as like a colored lens, that all these things that you heard and all these things that you believe colors the way you look at life and colors how you see yourself. So that handbook is a way to just rewrite so that the thoughts and beliefs that you have or you choose to have work for you instead of working against you?
Yes, how I look at it, Gary, is that, and this is what the way one of my coaches, but I always used to use a symbol of an avocado, but he does a better job than I do. He says, when you're born, you're like a diamond. You're absolutely perfect. So you have this 10-carat diamond, but then you got a couple of years when you can't even speak. You have no language. You're not angry. You're not anything. You just scream when you're hungry and you cry when you're wet, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is people then start tossing on you their beliefs. And this diamond gets covered, he says, with a whole lot of poo, everybody else's stuff.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you put some varnish, or if you're a female, nail polish around that poo to
Right.
keep it in. So
Right.
your reaction then is not through the diamond. So sometimes when I say to people, what's your truth in this situation? They'll say, what do you mean by my truth? I said, not everybody else's. What is yours?
Mm-hmm.
And start finding themselves, start speaking through their heart, through their mind, speak their truth, validate themselves.
When you because when I speak, I say to people, you know, if you stripped everything away, everything that people told you, everything that you said about yourself, all your possessions, all your belongings, everything, who are you inside? That's
Mhm.
really who you need to get in touch with. Not the person that you portray outside, not the person that you want people to believe you are, but your very core. That's when you really find balance in your life, isn't it?
That's what coaching does.
Yeah.
Coaching opens the frame. It helps you reframe things. It broadens your view of yourself and the world, and it helps you understand what's not you and what is you.
You are a pretty big proponent of communications, and many times we'll hear the old saying, and I hate cliches, I really do. But sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And
Yes.
you've you're a big believer of what we say really matters. We many people don't realize that 93% of communications is nonverbal.
Absolutely.
Only 7% is the words we say. 55% is body language. 38% is the tone of our voice. And only 7% are the words. Now, when we communicate via email, 83% are words. I remember my sister would always type in capitals. And apparently using capitals means you're yelling. I
Absolutely.
never knew that. So I'd say to my sister, I'd say, why are you yelling at me? I knew she didn't know what I meant. And she'd come back, what are you talking about? I said, well, when you use capitals, people may perceive that you're yelling at them. So can you just, maybe give people some idea of what you mean when you say the way we say things really matters? Because that's really the core of communications, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let me give you one. I'll give you two or three examples. So let's look at the little word but. If I said to you, Gary, I really like you as a person, but I hate the way you speak in council meetings. What happens the minute you say but? You negate it. I really like you, Gary.
Mm-hmm.
And the person only hears what the end. So that little word, three-letter word, has a lot of impact. So we want to train people to change the word but, if they're going to use it, to say the negative first and the positive second. Because then what stays with the person is the positive. So that's one example.
Yeah. So when basically when we say the word but, and I give this when I do my communications seminars, I say when you say but, you say what you're saying is forget about what I just said. This is what I really mean. So
Yeah.
Tony Robbins had a really good thing. He called it the agreement frame. He said, don't use but, use and.
Absolutely.
So if someone came up with an idea in a meeting, one way of saying it is, that's a good idea, but this is what we're going to do. Instead of saying that's a really good idea and here's something else to think about.
Yes.
Totally different meaning. An absolute totally different meaning.
Absolutely. But it negates what you said first and joins them together and gives them equal weight. Even though is another two words we teach in coaching, because even though gives both things equal weight.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
So we teach a lot of those little practical ideas to help people, particularly people that have to navigate public service.
Sure.
You're dealing with the public in any way. So coaching takes people through that learning process.
Okay. Any other examples?
I usually, but, even though, and yet is another word I teach people a lot. So, for example, if someone closes their mind and said, no, we're not doing that, then I would teach them, say, well, no, we're not doing that yet. We might consider it in the future. And yet opens the door a little bit.
Carol Dweck is a Stanford psychologist. I don't know if you've heard of her. I've read a lot.
Yes, yeah.
The new psychology of learning, growth mindset. And Carol says she teaches people that people with a growth mindset, the best thing you could say to yourself is, I haven't learned it yet.
Yes.
But I'm going to learn it yet. One of the other words that, and I'd love to get your views on it, is the word should.
Yes.
That's a word that I say to people you really need to avoid, because you're basically, when you say to yourself, I should have, but you're scolding yourself. And when you say to someone, you should have known better, well, you're basically scolding that person. I replace should with, it would have been better if. Instead of saying I shouldn't have done that. Well, that's really harsh on yourself. Instead of saying that, saying, well, it would have been better if. Because should really kind of gives you the idea that everything in life is supposed to turn out exactly the way you want it to turn out. And that's when we start to get into problems. When I remember hearing a hockey coach say one time, and even a better example, I should have gotten the job. Well, my answer is no, you shouldn't have gotten the job. The person who got the job should have gotten the job. So when you say something like, I should have gotten the job, then you're basically saying, I did everything I could have done to get the job. So when I coach people, as I say, if something like that ever happened, and you go into your supervisor and say, I thought I was in line for the job. I was really hoping that I'd get it, but I understand. But what I want to do is I want to work with you. And so that you coach me so that the next time there's a position available, I'll be better prepared for it. Now, you have a better chance of getting the next promotion approaching it that way, rather than saying, I should have gotten the job, therefore I'm not doing anything else, I'm upset, and I'm not going to talk to anybody.
Yeah, one of the things I think is important to recognize through the frame in our mind, or the handbook in our mind, is that we have a certain script. And sometimes the script says, I have to be right, and in order for me to be right, I have to make you wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
The script might say that I beat myself up so much, you don't have to say anything to me. I'm so good at beating myself up that I need words like should, I should have, or I shouldn't have, or whatever, because that justifies my beating myself up, not getting any sleep. That helps me with keep my handbook the same. So I often say to people, before something becomes a mistake, it's a mistake. So I say to them, people do movies, they make movies. Sometimes they take 3 and 4 endings and they decide which is the best. So if you did a mistake, then say, okay, how could I do that the next time? And we have methods to teach people to do that, to be their own mentor, to do that.
And all people need is just that little bit of guidance, because we tend to make mistakes not even realizing that we're making mistakes.
Mistakes are hindsight. There's no such thing as mistakes.
Well,
mistakes are hindsight. We always do the best we can going forward. And then when we do it after, we say it's a mistake. Well, that's of no benefit. If you do the best you could moving forward, then how do you learn from it?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess ego has maybe a big part to people just don't want to be wrong, or they feel that they're beating themselves up. Brenda, I talked about the 7% of communications is only words. Speak to the nonverbal part again of how really important that is for people to understand that not only what they say, but how they say it is so critical.
Yeah, I think, well, I guess if we say how we say it, then that comes down to tone of voice, which is important. I think also if you're working with the public and you are a public servant in any way, then it's also important to watch the person's whole body, because sometimes people can lie with their face, they can lie with their voice, but their body doesn't lie, their lower body doesn't lie. So when people are interviewing, when they're for jobs, like for example, for town managers and people like that, it's important to see the whole person and to watch their body language through the whole process.
I think active listening is probably the best thing people to do, and some people, their definition of listening is what they're doing until while they're waiting to speak again. So we need to kind of, as you said, really step back and actively listen and look at the person's body language. Are they truly listening? Are they engaged? Are they doing the things that you like to see when somebody is engaged? I
The,
Go ahead.
Gary, there's a couple of points I'd like to make there. I think engagement, even if you're fully with the person, I think active listening means being able to reflect back to the person what they're saying to make sure you fully understand, and using their words, so that, because in English there's a dozen words that have the same meaning. So we have to be on the same page to keep rapport.
We and of course NLP, as you said, teaches us how to be able to meet that person in their model of the world. So
Absolutely.
right, so when someone trying to figure out what that person's comfort zone is, so that they're talking to you as if they've known you all their life. There's a great expression, and I know in the movie The Secret. I can't remember who the guy was who said it, but he said three words: thoughts become things. And I think in what you had said was thoughts are things. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners a little bit?
Yes, there's a great book if people want to read it by Prentice Mulford, Thoughts Are Things, and I think that he has it down pat. And there's many people like Brene Brown who, you talk about vulnerability and your thoughts. But when I say thoughts are things, when you walk into a room to negotiate, to complain, to have a meeting, who are you bringing in the room? So my thought that, oh, I hate this person or I dread this meeting, that's going to show on my face. That's going to show how I
Mhm.
bring myself to the meeting. So thoughts begin. There's a thought before an action, but it plays so fast we don't hear it. We don't know we had it. So thoughts are things. So it's essential to sit back and say, what am I thinking as I'm entering here? What am I thinking as I'm talking with Gary? How do I want to present myself? Because my thought, if I walk into a meeting and I say, I'm a good problem solver and I can work with these issues, I'm going to present myself much more positively than, oh no, I have to go in here. Oh, I dread the next 2 hours, because my body language is going to follow my thought.
The other word that you just mentioned then is I have to go in here, which is another word that we really need to be looking at, instead of saying, I want to go in here because this is going to be really, really, really great. The other thing about thoughts and things, just to elaborate on what you were talking about, every thought eventually becomes a behavior at some point or another, whether it's a subconscious or whether it's a belief or whether it's something. So we really have to pay attention to our thoughts. That is what everything starts with a thought, and subconscious thoughts are even more important, because that's our autopilot. That's
Mhm.
what we do every day, and we get up and do the same things over and over and over again. And whatever is written, as you say, in that playbook, a coach has a playbook and he has these plays, and when the team gets out on the ice, they follow the playbook. And anytime someone gets away from the playbook, he calls them over on the side. He says, "Hey, you're not in line. So that is so important." So here's the next question: can people really change their automatic reactions and thoughts?
Yes, I find two things. One thing I find, once people understand how their brain really works and the different components of it,
Yeah.
you know, that helps them immediately. Second, when they understand the philosophy that they're coming through. For example, some people just want to get the job done. Go for the
Sure.
goal, that's it.
Absolutely.
Some people want to pay attention to people and how people feel and how people think, and
Hmm.
that's their philosophy.
Sure.
Other people want to look at the context of the world, the information, the more intellectual approach. So once we know our own philosophy, then we can start saying, oh, okay, because I'm a humanist, I automatically want to know how people are feeling. People aren't going to like that if we do that.
Sure.
That's going to be my reaction. The person who's pragmatic says, no, our budget says we have this much money. We have no other choice. They're very pragmatic about what they want to
Hmm.
do. And the intellectualist in the room is going to be saying, well, okay, now what did we do other years? How did we get over that
Yeah.
deficit? They
Yeah.
start collecting information. So it's no point being upset with each other. But once I understand other people are going to come at things different ways, then I can be more patient. My automatic reaction to be impatient, to cut people off, to drown out what they're saying, to speak louder than them, to talk about them behind their back or do whatever I do, I don't have that need anymore.
I think when you mentioned NLP, and do you have a suggestion for um, our listeners that they could pick up like an NLP 101, because it would or a guide to an introduction to NLP, because people don't realize that we all, there are three kinds of learners. Some people are good listeners, some people have to be visual, some people need to be hands-on touchy type. And to I remember before I get into all this, I'd be sitting in a meeting and I had a presentation to the president of the company, and he all the whole time I was talking to him, he was looking out the window, and there was a bunch of other people in the room, and he was just looking out the window staring, and I'm thinking, boy, he's not engaged at all. He's wondering what he's going to do. And when the presentation was over, he had like 4 or 5 questions for me. He didn't have to look at me to listen. All he had to do was auditory. He just had to listen to me. So if we can become aware that there are different ways people gather information, we don't have so much tendency to judge people. And it's like you said, everyone gets together and we figure out a way to work together.
Yeah, I think you've talked about the modalities, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or
Right.
tactile. I
Right.
think those are very important. Also important in my world is the fact, are you sequential? If you're sequential, everything goes 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
If you're more random, you do things like a puzzle. So people think you're all over the map. You're not. You get your
Exactly.
puzzle pieces and
Exactly.
then you put it together. There are
Exactly.
people who are very concrete, like show me the paper, show
Yeah.
me the evidence. They want
Yeah.
that. Other people don't need the evidence. They have the ideas in their head.
And that,
So
yeah, go ahead.
all
Sorry.
that builds together to build a framework. And once we help people understand those things, like I can turn a team around in a pretty short period of time.
Sure. Yeah. And then of course you've got the left brain people.
Absolutely.
You've got your right brain people, and then you got your logical versus your emotional, and then you're trying to get those people to look. You're trying to get the logical people to look at some creative ideas, and then you're trying to get your creative people to come back into the room because they're gone
Absolutely.
crazy. It's just,
Yeah.
it can be a real mess, can't it?
Well, for example, I've trained with the High Conflict Institute. So I'm trained to deal with high conflict people and to train people how to deal with high conflict people. And that's one of the trainings that in conflict resolution and doing the work with the University of Windsor Law School was to be trained in those areas to help people really understand where that's
Sure.
coming from and how they can reframe it, which is very different than NLP, but it all fits
Oh, sure,
together in one
absolutely,
package.
absolutely. So, is there, I'm sure if our listeners just researched an introduction to NLP, it could give them open their eyes to that there is so much more to people, right, than what you see.
Yes, and that was going to be my next point, that there's a lot of information about NLP on the internet. Now, some of it,
Yeah,
I don't know,
exactly.
but there's also a lot of good books out there.
Sure.
There's a good book by Robert Dilts, who's on sleight of mouth. There's several books out there by Richard Bandler.
Yes.
There's a lot of books that people can read, and they're available through Chapters,
Yeah.
or Amazon. So they're easily accessible.
I think, yeah, John Bender and Richard Grendler, I get the guys
Yeah.
who basically wrote the book on NLP. If you get something by those two guys,
Yeah.
you're certainly hitting something there on the head. Brenda, does whether we view the world through the past, present, or future matter? And if so, how?
I think the frame of reference we bring when we get up in the morning influences everything we see and do in that day. For example, if I remember that you and I had an argument 20 years ago, and when I know I got a meeting with you at 10:30, then I'm dragging the past with me. I'm not letting it go.
Mm-hmm.
If my mind is constantly based on yesterday, then today is another version of yesterday. I'm not giving today a chance. If I'm able to give today a chance, then I'm willing to open up the frame to today is a new day. I'm not sure how it's going to happen, and I'm going to give the person a chance. If I bring the past, let me give you an example. If I did something you didn't like, and you're really mad at me, and then I did 99 things that were really positive, and then I did one more that was negative, you'd probably say, see, I knew what Brenda
Exactly.
Kelleher flight was. I could have told you.
We always focus on the negatives.
Absolutely. Rather than thinking, that's only 2 of 101.
Right.
So why am I judging Brenda that way? So rather than saying, okay, Brenda Kelleher flight, she did something I didn't like. It's a new day.
Yeah.
She's done 99 positives. Now she's done something. Let me focus on that one, and let's problem solve around that one that I'm dealing with now. I'm not going to bring up 101. How many people do you know in meetings throw things in other people's faces in the past?
Oh yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't help. It really doesn't help. So and if you're focused on the future, you have no idea what's happening today.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in today. You're
Exactly.
You can't see, hear, feel today.
That's why it's called the present.
That's why it's called the present.
Yeah. Brenda, wonderful conversation about all this, and I know you're going to be a big part as we move forward on this new mental health initiative that we're doing. As we finish off, I think everyone needs to understand that everyone has their own story, and just because someone looked at you the wrong way or didn't greet you the way you expected them to greet you, it's usually not about you. We have to sometimes step back and look at the bigger picture and wonder what could be going on in that person's world. Michael J. Fox said, be kind to negative people because you have no idea what's going on in their lives. Brenda, can you give our listeners something that they could use right now to make their life better before we close?
Yeah, I think one thing that they could do is that and I'll give you this little story. If I had a lemon and I squeezed it, I can only get lemon juice. I can't get a Pepsi or a Coke or orange juice. I only can get. So a person's behavior, it's what's inside of them. If I have no anger inside of me, I can't express anger. So what you're seeing is what's inside of me. Therefore, it's essential when you react to something or somebody to say, what's inside of me that's causing me to react that way? I think that's one thing we can do. Do self-reflection with love for ourselves. The second thing I think we can do is that we can step back and say, am I tied to that person's view of me, to that person's thought? What am I tied to? Do I know myself? What do I want? Who am I? Because we can easily be constantly reacting to the outside world. So we never get to choose how we react because other people are in control of our reactions. So we can make choices.
And that's where that pause button Comes
That's
in.
where that pause button comes in. The third thing I think that's important to recognize is that we do have the ability to make choices. We do have the ability. And if we take that ability, that right, that birthright to make choices that are best for ourselves, until you treat yourself well, I'm not sure we can ever treat other people really well without feeling some resentment.
Very, very well said. And what a great way to end. Brenda, it's always a pleasure. I feel as though every time we talk, I get more enlightened every day. You're such an incredible wealth of knowledge, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you take the time out of your busy day to come and not only talk to me, but to come and talk to all our listeners here. This group has grown to over 600 people, with very little, just by word of mouth, people wanting to get in and look at, listen to all of the interviews. And um, as you're listening to this, as you know, there's Brenda's contact information is right there up in front of everybody. So if you feel as though you're stuck, if you feel as though you need a little guidance and help to move along to become the best version of yourself, well, the answer is right there in front of you. Brenda, thanks very much, and I look forward to many, many more meetings and many, many more discussions.
Thank you so much, Gary. Have a great day.
Same to you.